price of freedom is death. We're coming to get our check.
Before we start this video, I want to thank everybody that's been liking, commenting, subscribing, putting on their post notifications, and watching my videos, because that means a lot to me, because that makes me feel as if I'm doing something good for the community, and that's really what the point of this whole channel is for. So shout out to everybody who's doing that. Please continue to do that, and thank you very much. So let's move on to the topic, which is the black gender war, or the battle of the sexes between black men and black women, why that's going on and why that needs to stop and how it can stop. So the first thing I want to tell you guys is that black people have always historically had an extremely strong family unit, from the times of slavery all the way up until kind of very recently. Even in the 1950s and 1940s, black people had a higher rate of marriage. Black women specifically had a higher rate of marriage than white women did. So black people have always had a very strong family unit. Even back then, black people adopted more, build more, had stronger relationships with their neighbors and their families. Our family unit, our community was so much stronger back then than it is now. And it's not that strong now because of systematic things that white supremacy has done to break that up. So one of the strategies is a divide and conquer strategy. And they make certain classes, certain groups not come together, not have a black first mentality, and have a individual mentality where they think they're their own special class in black society. And then they can either attack or promote that group to attack everybody else. And that creates division, and that creates infighting. Infighting is an extremely bad problem, and it's kind of one of the reasons why black people are in this situation today throughout the world. Okay, so right after the 1960s and right after the civil rights movement, you had another movement following right after that, which is the feminist movement. This would be the second wave of the feminist movement, or feminism, or whatever you call it. But this wave had black women and white women working together to achieve what they believe was feminism and, women's rights and things such as that. One of the biggest issues about this movement is not only the fact that it primarily benefited white women, but in some ways it manipulated a lot of the minds of black women to be a very rebellious and kind of antagonistic, and competitiveness. It put all those things in a black woman's head against the black men. Mind you too, at that time, a lot of the trades that were being taught in school had stopped. So black men stopped learning how to do skills. Black men started losing a lot of jobs. They were letting a lot of black men go. So the money in the house was not really coming from the black men, and they had a welfare. Now I'm kind of rushing through things, and I kind of want to break this up into multiple videos, because this situation, this topic is so layered, and everything I'm about to tell you guys kind of deserves its own video. But I want to, give you guys a brief explanation as to what this whole thing is about. So the welfare movement, which was the Democrats thing, that this whole gender war thing is really fueled by the Democrats. Now, I made my video about Donald Trump and the Republicans, and they're white supremacists too, but the other side of the coin, the Democrats, they're also very sneaky white supremacists. So as black men started to lose jobs and became less skilled, they started giving more jobs and more opportunities to black women, specifically so black women and black men could kind of be at odds. And the black women started to become the breadwinners of the house. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a black woman who's working or getting money, but they did this specifically for the reason of breaking up black families. They did this, and they also had a welfare system. Now, this welfare system was government. Pretty everybody knows what welfare is, but I'm going to break it down a little bit anyway. The welfare is the government giving aid and assistance, such as food stamps, housing and things like that, to people in need. But unfortunately, black people were the most in need. Black people were the most poor, and black people needed the welfare at that time. And the welfare system had it to where you can only get it if you are unmarried. Women could get it if you were unmarried, if you had kids or something like that. But the biggest thing is a man could not be living with you. So not only could a woman who, if she wanted to get welfare, if she needed welfare, she couldn't be married, she also could not be living with her man. Now, a lot of times they sneak and kind of broke the rules and they had the man living in the house, but the welfare system had it to where they would send agents coming to the house randomly, and they would like knock on the door, they would search through the house, and they would look through things to see if a man was living there. And if they had any indication that a man was living there, they would cut off the welfare. This was problematic for a few reasons, because first off, as a man, if it is your house, your presence is supposed to be in your house. Let's say you had your room, or you just got a house. You put plants where you want your plants to be. You put pictures and posters and other decorations. That's you marking your territory in your house or in your bedroom or whatever. And that also kind of manipulates the mind of a woman too, because a man can't be seen as an alpha male if he can't hang his coat up in his home, because a white man is going to come and see his coat and he's going to cut off his money. Okay, so that played in the subconscious of black women and in black men too, because you can't feel like a man if you can't have your clothes in your drawer, because another man is going to see your clothes in your drawer and he's going to cut off the money that you have. Another reason why this was also a problem too, because the man can't really be in the house as he needs to be, because the agents, like I said, would come randomly anytime, and when they knocked at the door, you would have to open the door. So a man could never feel super comfortable in his house. He would have to spend long hours away from the house, outside of the house, and he would have kids. He would have to spend long hours away from the kids in the house. He couldn't really raise the kids in the house as he needed to, because he couldn't be in the house in case the agent came in, and the agent comes in and they see, okay, there's a man here, you're living with a man, you lied on your application, so we're cutting you off. So he couldn't do that. These things really did a lot of damage, and these things were disproportionate to black people, because a lot of people had welfare at that time. They were not doing that to white people. They were not going in white people's house and cutting them off. Not I'm not gonna say never, because then there's gonna be somebody in the comments, they did it to one person, but the rate that they were doing it to black people was way higher than they were doing it to anybody else, and this destroyed the black community. Then you have the crack epidemic, and then you have mass incarceration, which kind of deserves its own video. But these things, right after the 60s into the 70s, 80s, these things really destroyed the black community. So keep in mind too, this is also the rise of feminism. This is also the rise of the mentality of, I don't need a man. This is also, if he ain't got money, he don't benefit me at all. And these things are being programmed into the black woman's mind and into the black man's mind. He feels emasculated. He's not really making any legal money. He can't really live in the house. Society isn't giving him the opportunities he needs to be a successful citizen. So these things are damaging to each person individually, and it makes us come at odds. Another thing they would do to divide the group and to separate the group was they changed the way we thought of ourselves, and they changed the way we thought of other people of the group. So Coming to America is a good example of this, where they had a lighter skinned woman who was super feminine, super nice, and she was the love interest. And then her sister, who was a darker skinned woman, she was the fast girl. She was kind of super sexual, like a little over sexual, kind of like, I don't want to say like whorish or anything like that, but she wasn't as ladylike as a light-skinned girl. And they would do this in other little sitcoms and things like that, and they would install colorism in the black community. Colorism is like a sub-form of racism, and colorism was kind of subliminally taught to a lot of black people through osmosis and things like that. It's really throughout the world, but it affects black people because it affects the way we see each other and affects the way we see ourselves. I'm gonna make another video about colorism, because colorism is just so layered that I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to not say anything, because it is important for us to understand where we are so we can overcome these things. But I am going to bring it up for a little bit, because this is one of the ways they divide us. So I'm going to play for you guys this small clip. It's a kind of sad clip, but this is a clip of how colorism is installed in the black psyche at a very young age, and how we grow up. If we do not address these problems, we grow up and we have subliminal colorism in our minds.
This 5-year-old girl gave some provocative answers during her test. I asked her about them later.
How about you? Why do you want that skin color?
Because it looks lighter than this kind, because this looks a lot like that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't like the way brown looks, because the way brown looks really nasty for some reason, but I don't know what reason. That's all.
So you think it looks nasty?
Well, not really, but sometimes.
Sometimes. And Brielle, they asked what color adults don't like. Do you remember what you said? Which one? That's right, that's what you said. Why do you think adults don't like that color?
Dark.
Dark. And adults, you think adults don't like dark?
Well, maybe some adults do, but maybe some of them don't.
The questions that got overwhelmingly white-biased answers?
Show me the one you think most children would think looks bad on a boy.
More than 70% of the older black children chose the darkest skin tones.
Show me the child who has the skin color most children don't like.
More than 61% of the younger black children chose the 2 darkest shades.
Show me the ugly child.
More than 57% of the younger black kids chose the 2 darkest shades. Dr. Spencer says the research shows the bias toward white is still very much part of our culture.
Now that was sad. And if it doesn't get addressed, like I said, if it doesn't get addressed and it doesn't get fixed, then we grow up with this self-hate and we grow up with this colorism within ourselves. And you can see this in a lot of different celebrities and stuff like that, and they spew a lot of colorism. Not just black men, but black women as well. So as I'm making this video, I realized it's extremely long, too long for one video, because I don't want to make my videos that long anymore. So I'm going to break it up into 3 parts, and I'm going to drop it all at the same time. So for part 1, this is part 1. Stay for part 2. Part 2 is coming.